Oh, it's hot in here. So I'm just preparing my beds for my main crop, tomatoes. I've got loads of tomatoes on the go, back in the greenhouse and in here in containers and things like that. So I'm in no rush really. And you'll see later on, my plants are quite small. I like them small, to go in small, because then you get the maximum number of trusses basically in the height that's available. And if your plants are this big and the first truss is here, then obviously you're missing out on a couple of trusses at the bottom there. So I always plant into these halos. I use these for pretty much everything now. You know, my peppers, my melons, my courgettes, my winter squash, anything I can, you know, conceivably use them for, because they're just so convenient. I like the fact that they've got these little pegs on the bottom that direct the water down into the root zone. I like the fact you can see exactly how much water you're giving each plant by the amount of water that fills up this ring here. I like the fact that the water drips in slowly over a few hours, sometimes as much as a day if these little holes get a little bit blocked. So you get a nice slow delivery of water, it's not a big rush. And yeah, I like the fact they provide a bit of a slug barrier, snail barrier and all that. So just really like them, it's really neat. And the other advantage of course is that you don't splash as much water onto the stems and the lower leaves of the plants. So yeah, I use these a lot. And the other nice thing about them is that if you're using strulch, which I am this year, then it holds the strulch sort of like this, away from the plant itself. So the water goes through the strulch preserves any water loss from the soil, so dramatically reduces the amount of watering you've got to do. So we'll talk about strulch a little bit later on. So I'm just popping these in. I have put my strings in already at the bottom of the pots, and I'll be planting the plants out tonight or tomorrow night, something like that. So the beds are really well watered, and loads of water down deep, enough water at the top as well, and the strulch will hold all that water and preserve it for weeks and weeks on end. In fact, I won't really be watering the beds at all from now on. I'll only be watering the plants, which is nice. And hopefully when I scrape all that strulch up and put it back into bags and store it away for next year, the beds will be pretty much ready and perfect for replanting. I'm actually not adding any new compost this year. All I've done is apply a few handfuls per square metre of 6x concentrated farmyard manure instead, because the beds are just in lovely condition anyway. They're really nicely composted from last year, and as I say, all I need to do is add nutrients really. There's no purpose really in adding more and more compost every year, other than it just raises the beds really high. I'm using strulch that I bagged up last year from the pepper beds, and I think it'll last a good few years. Somebody actually mentioned to me in the comments how expensive these halos are, and you know, and how expensive the strulch is, and that maybe they're not really required. Well, I just find, you know, for me it's a lot about convenience and reducing my workload in summer. So the combination, I think, of reducing the number of slugs and snails, reducing the amount of watering, having a really quick and easy bed turnover at the end in October when I'm switching over to my winter crops. Yeah, weed suppressant, you know, all these factors all sort of work together. And from an economics point of view, I find the actual halos, I worked it out because of this comment, that I can pay for these halos with 4 days worth of harvests at this time of year. So we're harvesting a decent amount right now, and as I say, if I just directed the value of that harvest and used it instead of subsidising our food bill to buy the halos, it would cost me 4 days worth of harvest. And if I added the cost of the strulch onto that, then it would cost me a week's harvest, and that is an easy investment for me to make, because the halos will last about 10 years probably. The strulch will last about 3 years. So, you know, it's like 1 day's worth of harvest out of 365 days of harvests. So, yeah, really, really easy investment decision for me to make. So just a few cautionary words about strulch. If you're using it fresh, this is a year old or some of it's 2 years old, then it really does off-gas, and so the manufacturers recommend that you don't use it in undercover spaces. I found it's actually fine if you just put it down a few weeks before you want to use it, before you put your plants in. But I have had it burn plants if you sort of plant little plants, little seedlings, into fresh strulch that's straight out the bag. So don't do that. But after a few weeks, then it's off-gassed a lot, and provided you keep your beds well ventilated like I do, like my pepper beds like right now, for example, then it's absolutely fine. And obviously once it's been used for a year, there's no off-gassing at all. If you want the slug and snail prevention kind of benefits, and you're using recycled strulch like I am, then I just sprinkle a sort of 1 centimetre layer on top, and I think that works. I haven't tried it yet, but I think it works. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. So I'm using about 1.5 inches or something like that right now to mulch everything, and just 1 centimetre on top of that to make a sort of 2-inch total. But I don't have many slug and snail issues really in the polytunnel, so I won't be doing that. I'll just be using this old stuff. When you're storing the old stuff, obviously you do want to make sure it's dry, which is not a problem because I tend to use it, contrary to the manufacturer's advice, only on my undercover beds. So yeah, and my goodness, it does look neat once it's all done. And if you've ever worked in industry, you'll know that tidy is a pretty good proxy really for slick and efficient, and that's what I'm always going for. So everything I do, try and keep it tidy. And I have just watered this in a little bit. And what I find is that when you water it, it just mats the straw together, the chopped straw together, and it just stops it blowing away in the wind. It does get quite windy in here because it's double doors. Oh, just got a bird just flying through. And like a nice free flow of air through the tunnel, especially when it's hot like it is today. Yeah, it's worth putting out. There's lots of other chopped straw products as well as strulch, and strulch is just the one that's very easy for me to get hold of, and probably a lot of other people. But yeah, lots of farms and things like that probably will sell you some sort of chopped straw product from farming waste that's a lot cheaper than strulch. But yeah, as I say, averaged out over 3 years of use, it's pretty cheap, and you can compost it at the end. Just use it as a brown. It's actually a really nice compost element, and you could leave it. I mean, obviously when you're scooping it up to store it, you'll leave quite a bit in the soil. That's kind of inevitable because you don't want to pick too much soil up with it, and that's fine as well. It just rots down over the years. So yeah, so I'm all ready for planting, as I say, which I'll do when it's a little bit cooler, probably tonight. Well, I'm back and it is so much cooler. I've got all my tomatoes, or most of them anyway. I've got a few still to go in this bed here, but these are a mix of the honeycomb and the sun gold, and I've lost track of which they are, but it doesn't really matter because they're very similar to each other. And these are taken from the side shoots on my early plants. So the early plants have got 4 trusses, they're about this high, and yeah, I think some of them have got 3 trusses of actual tomatoes growing on them, and 1 truss of flowers, and some of them have got 2 trusses of tomatoes and 1 truss of flowers. So these aren't too bad. I mean, they're a bit leggy, unfortunately, but yeah, they're not too bad. So I'm going to get these in. I think I'm going to put 6 of these in, but I'm not going to do 6 of these leggy ones. I'll probably do 3 of these, and I'll do 3 that I grew from seed, because I want to compare the results really between the 2 approaches. you know, growing from side shoots and growing from seed. Obviously it's really easy to grow from side shoots, and that's would be my preference if I can get away with it. And then somehow I've got to get this halo on, which probably isn't that difficult. There we go. Ah, forgot the string. I always forget the strings. Right, there we go. So that's looking quite healthy in there. So I know some people like to plant really deep. I'm not, to be honest, a big fan of doing that, because all the nutrients are near the surface. So if you plant them really deep, I'm basically planting them really deep into really nutrient poor sandy soil. I'd much rather plant them, you know, just at their normal natural depth and give them access to all the nutrients in the compost. And then the next ones that I'm doing are these Nagina, which are also known as crimson plum apparently. I grew crimson plum last year and they were excellent. Really lovely tomato, absolutely ideal for making sauces, but also tasted really nice just on their own. So yeah, I'll get those in, and then I'm just going to do one probably of the what's it called, Barry's Crazy Tomato or something like that, just for fun. So that's all done. I've got my strings in, and yeah, I'll show you the clipping system that I'm going to use as well. The last thing just to mention is that now I've sort of stood on this strulch, so I've compressed it down, and actually for maximum water retention it needs to be nice and fluffed up. So yeah, I'm just going to fluff it up a touch. So these are great. They just clip like that onto the string. So you just put the string through the middle there, and then it tightens up against the string, and the foam just holds the stem. So let's get nice and close. So the idea is you just pop that through underneath a leaf junction like that. Right, so there, that's what you that's what you want to do. And I promise it's not as fiddly as it looks once you've done it a couple of times. Right, so try and do that again. There we go. So I have tried all the different ways of clipping, and also just winding the plant round the stem round the string and all of that, and I much prefer doing it this way. It seems to put a lot less stress on the actual plant itself. The stem doesn't sort of twist and everything, much less likely to break anything. I've broken my unfair share of stems trying to thread them. And yeah, so this is the way I really like to do it now. And you basically have two clips, and as it outgrows a clip you move that one. So I'll soon put another clip in here, and then when that one's outgrown I'll move that clip up, and you only got two clips at any point in time. So you just keep moving a clip up from the bottom to the higher up as the plant grows. So I always forget a few details, so if you want more, check out the description in this video and you'll find a link to my tomato growing guide. I'm doing things a little bit different this year than I did last year, and I'll point those differences out in the guide, but that's where I tend to point people for the details. The video provides the overview. My name's Steve, I'll see you soon.